Hi everyone, I'm Elaine Quijano. Scott Pruitt has resigned as chief of the Environmental Protection Agency. He is the fifth cabinet member to resign or be fired since President Trump took office last year. His exit comes amid the growing cloud of scandal. Pruitt is the target of more than a dozen government investigations into his ethics and spending. Our Major Garrett reports from the White House.
Speaking aboard Air Force One, President Trump said there was, quote, no final straw, unquote, that led to Scott Pruitt's resignation. He said the embattled EPA administrator came to him a couple of days ago and told Mr. Trump he did not want to be, quote, a distraction. Questions about Pruitt's excessive office spending, first-class air travel, and the treatment of staff had Washington investigators working overtime. Pruitt was the subject of a House Oversight Committee investigation, 5 Inspector General audits, 7 pending Inspector General reviews, and 2 Government Accountability Office inquiries. In his resignation letter, Pruitt wrote he was leaving in part because the unrelenting attacks on me personally, my family, are unprecedented and have taken a sizable toll on all of us.
I think your actions are an embarrassment to President Trump.
In late April, a House committee grilled Pruitt on many questionable decisions, including the construction of a secure phone line in his office that cost taxpayers $43,000.
And I think, frankly, that the expenditure of $43,000 on secure communication should not have been made, and I would not have made the decision if I was aware of it.
Pruitt was also under scrutiny for renting an apartment from an energy lobbyist, using his position to help find his wife work, asking his aides to carry out personal tasks, and flying first class at taxpayer expense. Something he told CBS News is the takeout was because of security concerns.
That these threats have been unprecedented from the very beginning, and the quantity and type are unprecedented.
Until just recently, President Trump had stood by Pruitt, largely because he rolled back Obama-era environmental regulations and supported withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord.
The EPA is doing so well. People are really impressed with the job that's being done at the EPA. Thank you very much, Scott.
CBS News Chief White House correspondent Major Garrett joins me now from the White House. So, Major, as you mentioned, the president has stood by Scott Pruitt. How much of this resignation was bowing to outside pressure?
Bowing to outside pressure is certainly part of it. There was some internal pressure as well. There were factions inside the Trump White House for months saying, Mr. President, cut this guy loose. He's too much of a problem. He's creating even a political problem for us among Republicans. Nobody in the Trump administration had done that. Only Scott Pruitt had done that. 4 House members, Republicans, had called for him to resign. Several Senate Republicans, while not calling for him to resign, certainly were critical of Pruitt's mismanagement or alleged misuse of taxpayer funds. Joni Ernst from Iowa, John Kennedy from Louisiana, Susan Collins from Maine, and others were critical of Pruitt. And so for a while here, I would say for the last 3 or 4 months, there's been an internal conversation about Pruitt. But the president stuck steadfastly with Pruitt, in part because he saw Pruitt as not only very loyal, intensely loyal, but also someone aggressively and without any hesitation carrying out the Trump deregulatory agenda in a place where it matters a great deal, the Environmental Protection Agency. Because the scope of the way the Environmental Protection Agency interprets its ability to regulate pollutants for sure under existing law is somewhat broad. And Pruitt brought that back very narrowly from the expansive definition established during the Obama administration. And Trump liked that a lot. And he knew that within the business community, those actions were praised and applauded. And President Trump always likes to talk about the deregulatory agenda, and he liked to point, Scott Pruitt did so as recently as early June, as someone who achieved steady and constant success on that front. So, Pruitt, if the president is to be believed, and he said this on the route to Montana for the rally later this evening on Air Force One, he said there was no final straw, but Pruitt said he had become a distraction, didn't want to continue to be a distraction. Well, that's not a revelation. Scott Pruitt had been a distraction for a good long while. It appears that either investigations, some of which are being conducted by the Environmental Protection Agency's Inspector General, they're due in about a month. The House Oversight Committee had recently obtained some new testimony, very potentially harmful to Pruitt. Those things may have converged. And also, a midterm calculation for this election season very well may have been the decisive factor. because Scott Pruitt was becoming not only a public distraction, but part of an ongoing conversation about the president's approach to environmental policy and deregulatory policy. And in swing districts, that was looking to be more harmful than helpful. So Pruitt perhaps saw that as well, didn't want to become part of a dialogue that could be harmful to House Republicans and Senate Republicans, and bowed out.
So, Major, regarding those inquiries into his behavior, will those continue?
So the Inspector General for the Environmental Protection Agency announced this afternoon it was going to take stock of all the various, and it's important, those are inquiries, audits, and reviews, not full-blown investigations. It seems like a strange semantic difference, but for that particular agency, it's an important distinction. They're going to take a look at all of them. There are several pending, numerous ones for the Inspector General within the Environmental Protection Agency. Some may continue, some may be delayed or dropped entirely. The House government oversight investigation will probably wind down because Pruitt's no longer there. Sometimes investigations or inquiries or audits continue in Washington just to establish what happened and have a public record. And in Scott Pruitt's case, there are several allegations that will probably require that kind of public transparency and visibility, if for no other reason, to establish what he did as compared to what he was alleged to have done, and serve as a cautionary tale to future EPA administrators.
Meantime, Andrew Wheeler will serve as interim head of the agency. What do we know about him?
So he worked at the Environmental Protection Agency in the early 1990s, 1991 to 1995. His area of focus was on toxic pollution control. Then he left the EPA and went to Capitol Hill to work for Senator James Inhofe, Republican of Oklahoma, a very strident critic of the Environmental Protection Agency and a big-time skeptic of climate change, global warming, and all regulatory efforts at the federal level dealing with that particular issue. Then he became a coal industry lobbyist, and until very recently, meaning just a couple of days ago or a couple of months ago, was vice president of the Washington Coal Club, which I didn't even know existed until about 3 hours ago. Anyway, it's a club devoted to the interests of the coal industry right here in Washington. So you can fairly conclude from his history on Capitol Hill and from his advocacy on behalf of the coal industry that he is intellectually, possibly ideologically, sympathetic to fossil fuels, as was Scott Pruitt. Environmental groups immediately said Andrew Wheeler is exactly like Pruitt, except without all of the investigatory baggage. Conservative groups said they fully expect Wheeler will continue to carry out Pruitt's deregulatory agenda.
All right, Major Garrett at the White House, learning there is no shortage of lobbying groups there in the nation's capital. Thanks so much, Major.
Thank you.